of session, mainly inspired by my wife, bless her, asking too many questions. She doesn't understand what I try to do. But more importantly as well, a lot of friends have reached out to talk about many of these topics. So I thought that I'll put that content together just to give an idea about the philosophy of investment, to take away the risk, that the perceived risk about getting to the stock. And talking about that, I'm gonna start with this small quote from Batman Forever. There is a very nice one that says, "You will always fear what you don't understand." And what I'm hoping at the end of the session today, in 2 hours time, I hope that this fear is gone, at least. Yeah, you understand what we are trying to do. You have a plan in mind, and more importantly, just think about it. Why do you want to do this going forward? Few disclaimers. A small, again, as you can see, I'm already a certified financial advisor from a very interesting show called the Last Week Tonight show. If you want to get a certificate yourself, you can simply click on the link. You'll see a small YouTube video that tells you a little bit about that. The point that I'm trying to say here is, again, everyone can do financial advising. Everyone can get a certificate. So it's all about you thinking about what you want to do about your money. And again, it is your money. It is your risk. It's not my risk. It's not your financial advisor risk. Anyone has HSBC Premier account, relationship manager? Spoke to him recently?
Yeah.
Yeah? Did you get a best as well, saving plans with him?
Useless.
Okay. We'll talk about that a little bit. But at the end of the day, this is your money. This is why it is your risk. It's not the financial advisor risk. It's not whoever gave you sold you any policy risk. It is your risk, and this is why you need to think about it. You need to learn about it and manage the money the right way. Finally, again, you should not consider this as a financial advice. It's not a financial advice. Yeah, this is just an attempt to give you more financial education in a way, to give you the basis that you can start from, at least change the way that you think about the money and your investment, and where should you put your money, and then basically take that to what we call, this is a very interesting buzzword at the moment, called financial independence, and hopefully at some point retirement as well. So this is a way to get to retirement. Finally, a small story about where I am from investment, why I'm making that talk at the moment. So again, to start with, I didn't really witness a market crash since I started investing in the stock market. This is something very important to know. So I haven't went through the cycle of the market going down and then getting back up. But I experienced the market crash, the latest market crash in 2008 when I bought my house back in the UK. I bought it just before the market crash, at the top of the peak, where I bought the house, and as soon as I bought the house, the market crashed and the value of the property went down by 30%. At that point of time, I went into something called negative equity, which means if I sold the house, I would need to pay back all the money to the bank and then add on top of it as well, extra money. So it's not a good experience. It's not an easy experience either. Emotionally, when the market crashes and you lose money, it's not an easy thing to go through. Although I didn't face it in my stock market and the market would crash, but still it wasn't an easy experience. The closest to that was the last October, when the market had a small correction, when it dropped. I started trading around 3 years ago. I put an average around $45,000. By October last year, it was around 61,000. By December, it went back to 45. Yeah. So again, losing the money and losing all what you have been working with for the last 2.5 years was not an easy thing.
The good thing that I did as well is, again, I controlled my emotions and I didn't sell. Today, I'm back again to the 60K. So the point is, again, it's all about emotions. It's all about how you think going forward and how you act to that changes. I joined Microsoft nearly 8 years ago. Since I joined, again, I use ESPP. I have a small section around Microsoft ESPP at the end, but again, from day one, I put a big portion around my ESP contribution, and then I started reading about the stock market in nearly 2014 and 15, and I didn't really start until again 2016 timeframe. I still wished that I have started earlier. I remember walking in 2008, just after the crash of the market, walking with a friend of mine, and I was telling him that this is the time that we should start investing in the stock market. If I put $1 at that point of time, that dollar could have done me at least $4 each. Okay. Small disclaimer here, again, we are in Microsoft. This does not represent Microsoft in any way. This is just my personal view at the point. A few things to highlight. If you are serious about investing, I would definitely recommend reading these books. Again, let's say that you'll invest $100,000. Each book of this is around $10 to $20 each. This book, the first one on the right, The Intelligent Investor, was written in 1948 and talks about the market for 100 years, how it looks like. The writer, a guy called Ben Graham, is called the inventor of value investing. He's the mentor for Warren Buffett. He tells you exactly how the market works. And again, set the scene about what should you do with your money. It's like a dry book, but it is really, really good. The second one is a practical one, written by a teacher who used to live in Singapore, who start to take the concepts of value investing and start to use that as well. And this is the practical side of things. How can you apply that to practice? The last one is a book written by Mr. John Bogle. He passed away 2 years ago. He is the creator of what is called low index funding, the concept that we'll talk about today in more details. Another area as well, which I would highly recommend, again, from that Google book, a community called Boglehead, which think the same way. Also, Choose FI talks about financial independence in general. How can I reach financial independence and possibly retire early, as you rightly mentioned?
After
So,
this is what I was expecting.
So let's see. And more, what I would really recommend is to join the Facebook group that I put the link in here. These guys are really awesome. They help you across all the way in. I'll use a lot of these codes again. The idea as well is very simple. Building wealth is a marathon. Yeah. Building wealth is a marathon, not a sprint. Discipline is key. How can you be disciplined for years to come? Not for a few months, not for a few years, no, for 10, 20, 30 years to come until you retire. The first part of this session is mainly about to get your mind right, about thinking about how you should think about this. How can you practice thinking about investing? But before you start investing, first you need to go through a few milestones. You need to be debt-free, in a way. So don't go and tell me that you have a personal loan, you have credit card interest, or you pay credit card interest, which is very high. Think about student loans for the guys in Europe. Mortgage as well is another thing, although it's a very cheap way of paying loans. Maybe you may not decide to finish it early, but generally speaking, again, you need to make sure that you don't have any debt at your side. Don't go and take a loan to start investing. It doesn't make sense. Yeah. No one. This is really high risk. Take a loan to start investing. It's a no-brainer. It's an equation for failure. Yeah. The second part is saving. And again, this is not a session to talk about how can you get debt free or start saving, but at least you need to make sure that you have some sort of an emergency cash on the side, something that can help you for 3 or 6 months without a job. You shouldn't touch that cash. That should be saved somewhere so that in case of emergency, you can reach out to that money. And on top of that, you start thinking about some other things like buying your own home. Yeah. Again, it is debatable. Again, people living here in the UAE, whether you should buy or rent or whatever the scenario is. But again, I see that buying your own home in general is a good guarantee for you as well to start thinking about investing. At least you don't have a mortgage to pay. You don't have any other commitment or rental to pay. It is my own home. No one is going to kick me out. Mentally, it's going to be better for you to do that. And finally, some disciplined savings and sensible spending. Again, I'm just reflecting again to the UAE lifestyle as well, with the luxury all around us. It is very tempting to go and spend. Yes, that's really correct. But we also need to think about your retirement. If you are spending a lot of money on luxurious stuff, on new cars every year or whatever the scenario is, it's totally your right. I'm not saying anything. But again, that basically means that it's going to start slowing you down from getting to the figure that you need for your retirement. Majority of us right now lives or works for a private sector, and majority as well don't have any pension plan in place. This is your opportunity to build the pension plan. You need to think about it this way. Finally, start investing and do a few things. I'm going to talk about them in more details in this session. Low-cost index ETF, minimize the trading cost, dollar cost averaging. I'm going to talk about that as well. Bond and stock ratio, retirement planning. All these different topics, I'm going to start talking about them today. Give you the basics about what you need to do. But let's start with why shouldn't you invest? Yeah. And bless her, my wife as well, and a few friends were talking about this. The first one, which is a very interesting one, it is too hard and complex, only for smart people. Unless I'm in banking or IT, I wouldn't be able to do that with all respect to everyone else. Yeah. The other one, which is very interesting, it's extremely risky and stressful, and I know people who got heart attacks by doing it. This is very common as well. We hear that a lot.
Yeah, what about get 1 to 7?
Yeah.
Yeah, lost 70% of the stocks.
Here you go. There you go. We need to talk about that as well. We'll cover many of these things. What was wrong at that time? Other ones, in peak times, I need to watch the market all the time. It is safer with bank deposits and property investment, very common one. Everyone advised not to do it. They can't be wrong. I don't know what to do. I don't need a DIY. I have someone that is doing it for me. A saving plan from HSBC or Premier or whatever the scenario is. But let's talk about facts. The first fact that I'm going to start with is the market will crash. This is guaranteed. It has to crash. It cannot continue going up forever. The second part is market is volatile. It will go up and it will go down, but it will go up more often. You will never know when it will go up and when it will go down, even if you try, even if you guessed. At the end of the day, it's not guaranteed. Nothing is guaranteed. Average market return, 6 to 10%. Historically, it's 9.5%. I'm not talking about the dollar value here. So if you do nothing, just put your money in the market and leave it for 30 years, it will make 9.5% average, including the crash. So some years it's going to do 20, 30%, and some other years it will crash 60, 70%. So depending on the scenario. And again, finally, I'm just highlighting that you can never win Mr. Market. Mr. Market is a term coined by Benjamin Graham to refer to the guy, to the market, as if it's someone that comes and starts persuading you around, you should buy this, you should sell this, you should buy this, you should sell this. Some more facts. The saving plans some of you have with HSBC are worthless from an investment perspective. And I have a small section on this as well. Depending on the time, I will cover that as well later on. The earlier that you start, the better result that you get. Again, I do remember thinking about it in my 20s, 24, 25 years old. I didn't do that at that point of time. I had other priorities, which is fine. But sometimes I really had some money and I didn't go and do that. Again, thinking out loud, if you started that discipline early on, and this is why, again, this type of education is really good for all beginners. I'm really thinking about as well giving it to again, student graduates and so on. It's really important that people start thinking about that as early as possible. You cannot build wealth with bonds. So bank bonds that we have, some of us have, we cannot really build wealth with it. Yes, maybe some pension on the side, and again, I have a small slide that talks about this, but you cannot build wealth, you cannot get rich in a way. You have to use assets, which is higher risk by definition. Couple of examples here. If you put $1,000 in bonds in 1956, that will grow to $56,000 by 2008. If you put the same amount of money in stocks, it will get up to $362,000 in less than 6 years. Another example. Again, it's very clear that the volatility of bonds is high. You have multiple drops in here, even dropping nearly every single year.
I don't think that's bonds, that's stocks.
This is stocks, sorry, for the stocks, apologies for the stocks. Whereas the bonds, which is the green one, it's quite stable. Both of them goes up. Yeah, bond will go up as well, but stock on the long run it will go up much higher. This is why you need to make sure that at early stage, majority of your portfolio should be with stocks. We'll talk about that as well and how to balance to again reduce the volatility of the changes. Another example, 100 years in Dow Jones. Dow Jones is an index referring to the US market. If you put $100 in 1960, 100 years down the line, that $100 would have done you $20,000. No one would actually live all that amount of time. But again, the theory is solid. Yes, again, multiple drops, multiple recessions across the board, but the end result is the market will grow up. Ben Graham again mentioned a very interesting quotation saying, "Those who do not remember the past are condemned to repeat it." This is the reality. It's a statement that he said in 1948 and still valid until this point of day. Let's see the alternative. What other alternative people normally do? The first one is properties. And normally they go and say, let me buy a property, I will rent it out or I'll keep it. So there is two types of income here. The first one is income from renting it out. That's normally between 4 to 5% average worldwide. And the other part of that is income from the gross, the value of the property itself. which normally is much, much higher than the rental itself. The good thing is, it's a very known and familiar asset investment and vehicle. So people know that. Yeah. Okay, my parents used to do that as well. You will find someone or some of your friends have already been doing it. Maybe you have done that as well multiple times, you never know. It's a good fixed income for retirement. Mortgage rate normally, or the loan that you get in order to finance the property, is normally the cheapest compared with any other type of loan. But at the end of the day, it's a loan. What's bad? Liquidity. If you decided to sell it, you cannot just put it in the market and sell it today. It can take weeks, it can take months, it can take years, depending on the property, the location, the area, the country, the economy, you never know. Yeah, so liquidity is a huge risk. Yeah. Time to market as well. Time to market, you need to know when you get in and when you get out. If you couldn't do that correctly, you can lose a lot of money.
Or stuck.
Or get stuck. You can leave it for the next 10, 15 years until the market goes up again, and maybe it will go and maybe it will not. You never know. Diverse rental require management as well. So if you decided to rent it out, depending again where is that property and the maturity of the market, the property market as well, that will need either again have someone to offshore that to them to manage the rental. There is an overhead, there is a management overhead which come with a cost as well. You will end up again with a rental of 4 to 5%. If you lose 1 month rental between 2 tenants, you lose the rental for that, your investment for that year. And the most important part is no diversification. It is exactly the same discussion as picking one single stock. Huge risk. You have only one property. All that money is in single assets. If that asset goes down, the whole money goes away. So there is no diversification. The second part is bonds or bank bonds. Actually, the correct financial term for that is what we call certificate deposits. Yeah.
That's exactly what I wanted to ask about, my Egypt one.
Yeah.
15%.
So that's an interesting one. So I have a slide on that. So average return worldwide is around 1 to 2%. Yeah, sometimes 3 to 4%. I'm not talking about the dollar. What's good? It's safe, guaranteed by the central bank. Good fixed income for retirement. What's bad is rates are really very low majority of the time. Exception is Egypt and maybe other countries like Turkey, for example, now provide a high rate for the USD dollar. If broken before maturity, rates are dropped. It's not an investment vehicle. Normally, it doesn't beat the inflation rate. And this is the point about Egypt now. So just to think about that, if I looked at inflation, and the figures are coming from tradingeconomics.com, you can get access to that, reference to that. This is the inflation for the last 50 years. Again, majority of the time, it is over 0%. For the last 10 years, focus on the last 10 years, it's again average 10% until 2016, where it jumped 30%, and these figures are per month. Yeah. If I added the interest rate to that one, which is the red line, you can clearly see that the interest rate does not beat the inflation. So what does that mean? Whatever figure you get from your certificate bonds, it will not beat the inflation. Even if you get them, that simply means you are poorer every single month compared with the month before.
And that's because of the Egyptian.
Regardless, here it doesn't take any devaluation of currency or whatever. At the end of the day, this is an inflation figure. This is an inflation figure, and this applies across the board, by the way. Yeah. So the point is, bonds will not be inflation. If you continue to stay with bond, best case scenario is you will be exactly the same part as inflation. So you are as rich as last year, as rich as last year, assuming that you spend no money. If you start taking money out, then that simply means that whatever you get is less. Yeah? So let's put this on the side, because again, I hope the message is clear around bonds will not drive investment.
Yeah, but as opposed to not doing bonds.
Yes. Yes. It's better than doing nothing, I would
Better
argue.
than doing nothing.
Yes, I agree. It's better than doing nothing.
And then inflation will be going up, and your money is the same. And
I agree. So it definitely is better than just leaving them cash, I would say. Yeah, I will agree on that. Again, just a disclaimer, we're not talking about any Islamic related activities in here. So I have a session at the end that talks about Islamic finance. So that's outside of that discussion.
Does it make a difference regarding the investing with buying bonds from Egypt or Turkey than buying on other countries? Does it make a difference? Or it will, if I buy in Egypt, it's better to buy in Egypt. If you are buying bonds, to buy in Egypt, that's better than buying somewhere.
So again, first of all, I'm talking here about the certificate of deposits. When later on I start talking about bonds, it's a slightly different topic. Yeah. So the certificate of bonds is something that you buy from the bank and annual. When you start to say I want to buy a bond, which is اللي هي السكوك سوري مش السكوك اللي هي أذون الخزانة والحاجات ديت اللي هي government bonds and so on. حاجات all of these government bonds and you're talking about if you want to take a bond, if you want to buy a government bond, you're talking about 200K, yeah, to buy just a bond, and then you buy this bond and you own it. And majority of the time you cannot just buy it directly because the banks will buy it and then resell it to you in a certificate bond. So the only way to do that is through what we call a secondary market. I don't want to go through technical details at this stage. Let's be clear that certificate of bonds is totally out of the equation at this point. Later on, I'm going to start talking about the other topics. But before we do this, let's talk about this important slide. Trader versus investor, or used to say. Yeah. Okay, let's think about that. Trader, I would like to call him also speculator. Yeah. The first part is his type. A trader is normally a gambler. Again, very generic. Not all traders are gamblers. Yeah, don't get me wrong. Yeah, but again, generally speaking, as a style, he's a gambler. Whereas an investor is a disciplined saver. The second part is strategy. The trader will try to buy high, buy low, and sell high. Although again, you never know when low is low and when high is high. An investor, he think about a retirement plan, retirement balance plan. Behavior toward the market. The trader will try to speculate and guess if the market is going up or if the market is going down. He's going to spend a lot of time reading material about this company, making bets that, oh, when the earning happens, I'm going to gain that amount of money, and so on. The investor really don't care what's happening. He doesn't even watch the market. Approach, tactical. Thinking about monthly income. Investor, retirement, strategic. 30 years down the line, 20 years down the line. Personal behavior, emotional and risk taker. Investor, rational and conservative. Revenue taking, time target. You want to take revenue within minutes, days, months. Investor, on retirement. Transaction types, buy and sell, whereas the investor will only buy. May sell a little bit to do a rebalancing or, again, when he gets to retirement, but early stages, it's only buy, accumulate, accumulate, accumulate. Time the market, try, he can win sometimes, but he will lose a lot. Investor will never do that. The market crash, emotionally, he's going to go and sell to stop the loss. Yeah,
because you want to sell the loss. Tomorrow is going to be cheaper. Tomorrow is going to be cheaper. Whereas the investor will go and buy according to his plan. If he's investing every month, then at that month, you're going to go and buy, regardless whether it's crashing or not. Margin, which is what we call the broker loan, he will always try to use that. I don't want to give details about this at this stage. Whereas the investor will never try to use that. Stress normally is high with the trader. It's low and cool with the investor. Sleep at night, struggle, unlike a baby. I can tell you guys.
The traders.
I can tell you I've been here. Yeah, I've been in the trader. I have had many of these things.
That's a full-time job.
Not even that. No, it's even you can do it. I used to do that, and well, I used to do a little bit of trading. When I started to do trading a lot. And I can tell you, first of all, I used to do trading in the US market. The US market starts at 6 p.m. and closes at 12 or 1 a.m. So I had time. I finished my work at 5, 6, and I have time to watch the market between 6 to 1 o'clock. I can tell you, this is based on experience rather than anything else. Yeah? And again, I'm not saying that you shouldn't trade. You shouldn't trade. No, you can trade, but you can trade with 5%, maximum 10% of your money. It's nice to beat the market. It's nice to have a bet and give it a try. Read the homework about this specific company or that specific company, but that should not be more than 5 or 10% of your portfolio. You should have a limit. As soon as you go across over that limit, drop and rebalance. Move the remaining to your investment. Yeah. People who invest make money for themselves. People who speculate make money for their brokers. Guys, I know people who lost over $100,000 recently on some of these activities.
Oh, no.
Out of the $100,000.
Oh. You have to go for
Although at some point that $100,000 was worth 250, 300. Yeah. Again, greed drives people. This is why again you want to be rich. This is why again you want to retire rich as well. So it is okay to be greedy. It's a natural thing, I would say. But it's all about the behavior. It's all about the strategy that you take. Taking a huge risk means also that you have a hard outcome out of it. This is why we are introducing what we call the couch potato investor, which is a passive investor, a guy who just sit on the couch and start investing. The equation is very simple: easy plus cheap equals superior. Very simple discussion. All what I want to do is I want to sit on my couch and just make sure that I follow that plan all the way in. I don't change the plan. I don't affect it with my behavior or emotions about how to do this. And to do that, 2 simple steps. The first one is you need to fund a broker account. The second part is you need to buy ETF. Obviously, a few questions here. First of all, what is a broker account? Which broker should I go with? And finally, how should I transfer funds to that broker? ETF, what is ETF? Which ETF should I go and use? And how to buy an ETF? And this is what we hope that today will cover some of these questions. Okay. Part 2, principles of investing. How are we doing on time and meeting? Any questions on the meeting, guys?